Theo here. Welcome to Tuesday. And today we start off with a viewer's request that was asked for a little while ago. The Jam, a band that I sort of got into as a young teen. Really like this band. Got a few of their albums, and think they were a pretty damn good band. Okay, they were formed way back in 1972 at Shearwater Secondary School in Woking, in the county of Surrey. It's just south of London, really. The band had a huge success in the UK. I mean, they released 18 consecutive top 40 singles, 6 albums, and of course the classic lineup was Paul Weller on vocals, lead guitar, bass guitar, keyboards and backing vocals, Rick Buckler on the drums, and the legendary bass player Bruce Foxton. We're going to look at their 6 albums today, and we will eventually look at some of their non-album singles, of course, because there's certain songs that we can't not discuss when we're talking about the Jam, of course. So that will come up at some stage in the near future. So today we'll concentrate on the 6 albums they put out. So coming in at number 6 is that 6th and final album, released in 1982, The Gift. First track on this one is called Happy Together, and this always starts off with that distinctive Bruce Foxton bass line. It's a good song, but I wouldn't say this is one of those classic Jam songs, but it's still a good track. Then we get Ghosts. I love Paul Weller's guitar on this. Great guitar player, Paul Weller. And he sings it pretty cool. It's a good track. Then we get Precious. A little bit funky this is. This is something that Paul would go on to do when he went and formed the Style Council. And I wasn't that keen on the Style Council. It was a different sort of sound, and I liked 1 or 2 of their tracks, but I wasn't a huge fan. But that was the sort of the sound that Paul was going. And then we get Just Who Is the 5 O'Clock Hero. Great title of a track. Just one of them good old-fashioned Jam songs. Great drumming from Rick. Really good track that one is. Then we get Trans Global Express. This has got a bit of a Cream feel to it, especially with the drumming. You've got a little bit of horns on it, which adds to the atmosphere. It's a pretty good track. Then we get Running on the Spot. It's alright, bit mediocre, not one of the best songs on the album. Then we get an instrumental called Circus. That's great. 3 great musicians. Great, but that bass from Bruce is pretty prominent on this, and the drumming from Rick is good as ever. The Planner's Dream Goes Wrong. Not keen on this one. There's a lot of brass in there, bit of steel drum. It just didn't suit their sound, to be quite honest. Then we get Carnation, one of the weaker tracks on the album, I'm afraid. Not a particular favourite of mine. It just ambles along. Then we get the brilliant Town Called Malice, absolute belter, classic. That great bass line from Bruce, dum 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 dum. That lovely keyboard run as well. It's a great track. And the last track is the title track, The Gift. Wasn't too bad. It's got one of Bruce Foxton's great bass lines on it, and some good guitar work from Paul. This album isn't too bad. I don't dislike it. Little experimentation, and some of the tracks just didn't work, but the ones that are still that classic jam sound were brilliant. And you could see that Paul's leaning towards what he did with the Style Council on some of them experimental tracks. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 5. It's the second album now, released in 1977, and This Is the Modern World. First track on this one is The Modern World. Really good bass line on this. Some great guitar stuff from Paul. Solid track. Then we get London Traffic. I love this. It's got that raw, punky feel to it. Some great drumming from Rick. Very short track, but a really strong track. Standards. Oh, that opening riff. Oof. Paul's vocals are brilliant on this. It's just great song with lots of energy. Which, what to me the Jam is, it's a band with energy. Life from the Window. It's one of them typical early Jam songs. Pretty solid track that one is. Then we get the Combine. It's an okay track. It needs a little bit more beef. It's a little bit hollow in places. It's a shame because it is a pretty good track. Then we get Don't Tell Them You're Sane. It's okay. It's not a particular favourite song of mine. Again, I think it just lacks a little substance. Then we get In the Street Today. Love the Rick's drumming on this. It's got real punk feel to it again. Solid track. London Girl. Great little track. Although it does sound a little bit hollow on the drums, it's still a good track. Then we get my favourite track on this one, I Need You for Someone. That bass line from Bruce, that's terrific. And then you get some good riffs here. That guitar solo from Paul Weller is pretty good on this one as well. Here Comes the Weekend, another of them tracks that's got a terrific bass line from Bruce Foxton. Terrific bass player. Really kept the groove with this band. Excellent track. Tonight at Noon. Solid track, nothing wrong with it. It just does a great job on that. They both all play well. Lots of energy on it. And the last track, probably the worst track on the album, a version of In the Midnight Hour. Nah. Didn't like it. Don't like it. Never play it. There's some really good songs on this album. I don't think it had the same impact as the debut album though. Some of the drum songs are a little bit hollow and the production on it. But it's still a solid album regardless. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 4, we go to the third album released in 1978, All Mod Cons. First track on here is the title track, All Mod Cons. It's a little short piece, but it's got that classic bass line from Bruce Foxton. To Be Someone, Didn't We Have a Nice Time? I really like this one. Very catchy tune. It's got some great backing vocals from Bruce on this. It's a really good track. Mr. Clean, love that opening guitar from Paul Weller. Then Bruce comes in with his bass. Solid drums from Rick. Solid track. David Watts, obviously it's a Kinks song. Really good version of this song. I love this version. It's nearly as good as the Kinks. It's brilliant. English Rose. This has got a little bit of acoustic in it. It's a quite nice track and a nice vocal from Mr. Weller. Like the track a lot. In the Crowd. My favourite track on this album. It's one of my favourite tracks by the Jam. I just love that cheeky little bass line from Bruce. And you get some nice gentle guitars on this, and it's just an all-round great track, and the solo on it is terrific. Then we get Billy Hunt, another of Bruce's mind-blowing bass lines on it, great little track. Then we get It's Too Bad, love the start of this, again more than classic groovy bass lines from Mr. Foxton. Rick's drumming on this is terrific. Them two were pretty solid, very tight, excellent track. Fly, another of them little gentler tracks, and I love the harmonies between Bruce and Paul in this. Really good job. Good solo from Paul again. The Place I Love, love Paul's opening riff on this. This is actually a nice little rocker. Lots of good riffs, great singing, just a great track. A Bomb in Waldorf Street, another strong track with some wonderful bass line and riffs, solid. Then we get Down in the Tube Station at Midnight, the big hit from this album. I love the different tempos in this. The drumming from Rick on this is terrific. He never misses a beat, and that bass line drives the song all the way through. Classic song. Okay, they stepped up a little bit more from the second album. The production's a lot better. I think this is when they started really hitting the groove. Some of the deep tracks on this album are some of their best, and I'll give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 3, we go to 1977 for that debut album, the classic In the City. Great album this is. Opens up with Art School, post-punk, or punk was still quite big then. Great chords strumming away there. It's a really good track. I've changed my address. This is an interesting track. It's not very punky, considering at the time this album came out. This has got more of a 60s feel to it, with a touch of punk. Really like that track. Then we get a great cover of Larry Williams' Slow Down. A punky rock and roll track. Great stuff. It really works. Great little track. Then we get I Got By in Time. Quirky little track. 2 minutes. Love Bruce's bass line again. I love listening to Bruce Foxton on the bass. And what a good vocal from Paul on that. Terrific. Away with the Numbers. This one isn't too bad. It's a bit different for them. It's a bit fast and furious. And then we get a punky version of the Batman theme. Nothing wrong with that. It's good. I like it. Then we get the title track, and it is my favourite track on this album, In the City. Again, it's just dominated by Bruce Foxton's bass. Lots of energy in this. Some harmonies between Bruce and Paul. Excellent. Sounds from the Street. Again, another track that's more 60s feeling than punkish. Really good track. Non-Stop Dancing. It's alright. Nothing special. Probably one of the weaker tracks on this. Then there's a track called Time for Truth. It sounds okay. Not a particular favourite of mine though, but it's reasonable. Then we get Talking My Love. I love this start. It's just plug, go, finish. 2 minutes 15. No messing around. Great rock track. Then we get Bricks and Mortar. The Engine Room of Rick and Bruce. Solid. Couldn't get a tram ticket between them. Absolutely tight as you like. Brilliant way to end the album. What I like about this album, there's two things. Its simplicity. fancy, rawness, and songs with lots of energy. Really blew me away when I first heard this. Terrific album. I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay, then coming in at number 2, we now go to 1979 for the 4th album, Setting Suns. Opens up with The Girl on the Phone. Always going to know you're going to have a good jam album when you open up with Bruce on the bass. Terrific song. Love that one. Thick as Thieves. I think this is some of Rick's best drumming in the jam. Absolutely belter. The bass and the drums on this are brilliant. Solid track. Private Hell. One of my favourites. Got some nice rock riffs on here. It is solid as you like. The Little Boy Soldiers, another good track. One of these deep cut tracks on this album. You know, all these singles, people, you know, if you forget about some of these album tracks, and this is one of the greats. Love this track. Wasteland. Some really good, strong guitar work from Paul Weller. Very, very good. Burning Sky. Again, it's every track on this album is pretty good. There's no bad tracks on this one. Solid track. Good stuff. And then we get Smithers Jones. I love this. The strings really add to this song. It gives it some nice atmosphere, and the lyrics are brilliant on this. This one was written by Bruce. Absolutely great track. Saturday's Kids. I love this. Again, that riff, the drums with a bit of cowbell. What, you don't expect cowbells on jam records, but you got one. It's a brilliant track. And then we get one of my favourite songs, Eaton Rifles. One of my favourite tracks by the Jam. It's just brilliant. What more can you say? Then we get Heatwave. Obviously, this is a cover of the Martha and the Vandellas song. Sounds more like Madness, but it's still good. It's a really good version of it. That was the last track on the album, and a good way to end it. Solid album from top to bottom. Just one of the great Jam albums. Play this one a lot. It's just, you know, strong subject matter, compelling cover. 8 out of RTO ranking of 8.8. So we get to my favourite Jam album. This is where I sort of come in. This is where I started my real, not love affair, but my affection for this band. And being a rocker, metal freak, you had to keep it quiet for a few years that I did like the Jam, because it was in the other camp. Because when at the time there was still that mod rocker thing. Some people would, the Parkers and the Who. I mean, I loved them all, but you couldn't say that, oh, I like the Jam in front of your metal fans. But this is where I really come in. And it's the 5th album from 1980, Sound Effects. First track is Pretty Green. I love this track. The bass line from Bruce Foxton is brilliant. The drumming from Rick is superb. Fantastic track. Monday is the next track. Again, one of the great Bruce Foxton bass line drives the song along. It's a little bit different, but it's just a real good song, and Paul's vocal on this is brilliant. But I'm different now. Great rocker. It's like a mixture of the Who and the Kinks. Brilliant track. Set the house ablaze. That opening riff on this is brilliant. You know, Paul Weller, very underrated guitar player, I think. He is a solid, solid player. Then we get Start, one of the singles off this, a classic track, dominated, of course, by probably Bruce Foxton's greatest bass line with the Jam. Just brilliant. Then we get my favourite Jam song ever. I don't know why, because it's not a rocker. It's called That's Entertainment. I just love this. I think it's the harmonies, the bass and the acoustic guitar on this is brilliant. I really love that song. Then we get Dreamtime. Nice track, rich rocker here. Brilliant vocals from Paul. Solid. Then we get Man on the Corner. Another of those Jam songs that sounds more 60s than 80s. It's a terrific track. Music for the Last Couple. Probably the weakest track on the album. Not a particular favourite of mine, unfortunately. Boy About Time, Boy About Town. Again, classic Bruce Foxton on this. Really drives this song. Got a bit of horns on it. Gives it a bit of that madness or bad manners feel to the song. Really uplifting song. It's only 2 minutes long, but it's so catchy. Scrape Away. Again, the feature of this is Rick and Bruce. That engine room of the Jam. Real deep cut drop from this album. It's a brilliant way to end the album. Lots of reasons why this is my favourite album. One, first thing I really heard from them, I think it's got some of Bruce Foxton's best bass work, some of best Paul's singing. I didn't have this album officially, but a friend of mine that was a bit of a mod, and we weren't into this taking the mickey out of each other. We just enjoyed music. I mean, this is a guy that one thing we did have in common, we both liked Tangerine Dream. So what he did, he put it on a cassette, this album for me. So I had a copy of it. And now obviously I've got it in my collection, because as you get older, people don't say, oh yeah, the Jam are brilliant. And I said, yeah, I love the Jam, always have. So that's why it's my number one. It's a great little album, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, I can't remember who asked now. I have so many requests. I must start taking note of who actually asks. But I think there's 1 or 2 of you have asked for this, so I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll be back later with retro ranking, and we got a retro ranking special this week. This is a Marillion retro ranking, and we're going to look at all those songs that didn't go on the album, because one thing with Marillion is they never released a bad song on a B-side. They steal a lot of their B-sides. So if you're a Marillion fan, go and check that one out. I'll be back later then, so bye for now.